always love interior design. This week I went to the interior design show, and there's lots of trends and great things to see. And it's always kind of fascinating. And I think that's why people love watching things like home TV, right? They like being at home, and they want to be able to decorate and see what's going on in homes. And I love to stay on top of the new trends and what's going on. This morning we're joined by Meredith Heron. She's an interior designer. Hi, Meredith. How are you?
Good morning, Deval. I'm wonderful, thanks.
Great. I understand you just got back from Paris. What did you do there?
I did. Well, I went to see what they call sort of the Fashion Week for interior design. It's called Paris Deco Off, and it's mostly held on the left bank, and all of the major fabric showrooms, furniture showrooms, have these wonderful open houses and presentations for designers to come and see their latest releases or what's going to be coming. In fact, when I came back, I sent all these notes to my office on samples that I wanted ordered, and they're like, we don't even have them in the system yet here in Canada.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, well, okay, we're a little ahead of trend, but that's great. So it's really incredible. It's 4 days of just wonderful, I want to say Parisian bohemia. Like it's just, they go all out. One of the fabric companies even took over an entire 4-story townhouse.
Oh my God.
Was kind of semi-abandoned, and did this incredible display. When you walked in the foyer, you could hear drums, and they had chanting, and a woman was playing glass bottles. It was just absolutely over the top, amazing inspiration.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I'm like, do these companies make any money? Or they're just spending money on this kind of stuff.
I know. But you know, it's so interesting because it's Fashion Week, so it's very similar. If you think about couture versus ready to wear.
Right.
And so they'll absolutely have some couture pieces that are just jaw-dropping, but then they're going to have your performance fabrics that, you know, you're like, what's under $100 a yard? And what's going to last 10 years on a sofa? So it's a wonderful trade-off, but, you know, you really want to spark that imagination, and some of the companies just absolutely went wild with it.
And so what trends would you say that you saw that you would consider using for a Toronto home? Like if we bring it back down to earth? What
Absolutely.
kind of trends were there that the real people could use?
Yeah, for our ready-to-wear stuff, there was a continuing thread, what I call it a strong feminine. A lot of curves still happening on upholstered pieces, curved sofas. It's very 80s, sort of that, but it's done with this more practical and more comfort in mind. It's much more comfortable than it was in the 80s. I do actually remember them originally. People are still using boucle fabric, which is that sort of nubbly texture. You usually see it in cream, or you see it in sort of a desert sand.
Yeah.
But it's leaning, more into the warmer tones. Desert. I know we can't really understand that here in Toronto, but desert colors are all the rage. So I feel that over the last few years, we've done a lot of recession beige, I call it, where people don't want to get too comfortable with something, so they just go with the desert beige. But they're adding in rust and ochre, burnt sienna. Brown is absolutely back. I think they're doing it a little more friendly this time. It's not so harsh. It's got a lot of undertone. It's skewing towards purple even.
Does that mean that we're because for a while the trend has really been a lot of gray. So does that mean that we're sort of skewing away from gray and, as you said, going into those warmer tones of the beige and the rust and the brown? Is that the general trend?
That seems to be the general trend. Most of the fabric companies have actually said those words, like people don't want gray anymore. They want something a little warmer. The problem, of course, is that you can go too warm and then, it doesn't really, it's not mutable. You can't change it. You can't add things to perk it up. It's sort of, you've kind of pigeonholed yourself. So what I suggest people do in those cases is go into some of those darker, more mutable hues. Like you might not like brown. I'm not a big brown person, but if it's skewing towards purple, and then I'm pairing red with it, I could still do like a really amazing jade green. And then it's got some freshness. And sometimes you just need those cooler hues to kind of give it a little more life and prevent it from becoming too oversaturated with warmth. I think that's what happened in the 90s, that I called it condiment decorating, when it was red, mustard, and green. And everybody did it. And you're like, oh, how do I get away from this? And that's why we went into gray.
Right. Absolutely. And then you'd mentioned that you were at a boat show in Dusseldorf. What were you doing there?
Well, I'm a sailor, as a wife to my husband who really loves sailing. I've become a sailor.
Right.
And so Dusseldorf holds, it's called Boot Dusseldorf, which is the largest interior boat show in the world. And I'm talking mega yachts, whether it's sailboats or the big power boats. I think I saw whatever James Bond's next villain boat is going to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, really interesting. And even watching these trends carry over. So I was going to say one more, fibers in Paris, where we're seeing a lot of mohair, alpaca, cashmere. I do and design my own rug collections, and those are huge, those fibers. And I'm seeing it also in sailboats.
Interesting.
Alpaca especially, it's this wonderful fiber that can both cool and warm. They're hypoallergenic, and so many more fabric companies, rug companies like myself, are using alpaca as a fiber, and really great on boats. Wool and alpaca are both really great on boats.
And so
cooling, heating.
And so you're kind of talking about like boat interior design. Is that like a thing, or is that like something that only like the super wealthy on a yacht would do? Like, do regular people who have boats in Toronto, are they looking at the interior design of their boats? I'm just curious.
Absolutely, they do. And the interesting thing is mostly in Toronto, it would be a retrofit.
Right.
So I will have clients come to me and say, oh, we need to do redo the interiors of our boat, whether it's upholstery, bedding. But now, because of the advancements in LED lighting and portable lighting that doesn't have to be hardwired in, love, we're using those on boats. Because, then you're not drilling holes in boats, which always scares me.
As it should. That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. So designers don't always have, you don't always get to start from scratch. You don't always get to be flown to fabulous locations to work on boats. Completely available to do that. But people who have their own boats, older boats that need a refurb or need a refresh, often do need interior designers to help them pick fabrics, especially with all the performance fabrics that are out there now. There's just so much more to choose from. And narrowing those down. And then how do you do your cockpit cushions? And, it's a super fun hobby that people really took up heavily during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm always about adding more flourish to your boat and comfort, because that's important.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's a great idea. And I guess I would have never thought about interior design for boats. When I go on someone's boat, I don't even think about it. Like, you're right. They generally look a little bit older, just because boats tend to be older, but that's all right. I mean, I know a lot of people who've decided, can't afford the cottage or don't want the cottage. They would just much rather have a boat in the city of Toronto. A boat is far cheaper than a cottage. And, that way it's 20 minutes to the water and they're out on the lake and they can do great things. They just don't need to spend 2 hours driving to a cottage to be on a boat.
We do call it the cottage in the city.
Yeah.
And we absolutely love it. But the interesting thing is we've been sailing now for about 8 years, and I start to look at interior design fixes for things that drive me crazy on the boat, like pillows that fall overboard. You know how many times we've been sitting on a dock and someone loses their pillow overboard? It's unbelievable. We actually have paddle boards at the ready to jump into the lake to go and save pillows. But adding little tethers or tabs that you can then attach the pillow to the boat or keep it in the cockpit. Those are the things that one of the reasons why I wanted to go to the show. I wanted to see some of the creative ways that they do that, especially on a luxury level.
Yeah.
So then you can just adapt that to a more regular use. And so we've already figured out a whole bunch of different ways that we can keep the cockpit clean. And, when you're sailing, you have to really keep in mind that you don't want pillows flying around or people flying around, but also keeping your guests' comfort in mind. So, coming up with those kinds of ideas to do that and bring up feminine. I mean, obviously, sailboats have been designed by men for thousands of years. And, what the first sailboat we had, I would joke with my husband that only my tall Danish relatives that were men could fit into it. Because like when you're just trying to get into the boat, I'm like, I'm not 6'3". Like that's a drop down that's going to hurt me. So,
funny.
How do you incorporate stools and how like anti-slip materials? And you can do it in a nice way. So,
yeah, I love it.
I'm trying to bring that into my 2025 manifestations.
Beautiful. I love it. Meredith, those are some incredible suggestions for sure. Meredith, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been very interesting.
Thank you. And oh my gosh, it's really snowing outside now.
Yeah. Yes, it
After all the sailboat talk, I'm like, really? No.
It's true. We're going to have to manifest nice weather in our heads. But
exactly. I'm on it.
Meredith, it's been great chatting with you again. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Have a great week.
Thanks. You too.